beat steadily against the kitchen window, the kind of soft, patient rhythm that blurs the line between time passing and time standing still. Meredith stood barefoot on the cold tile, nursing a mug of lukewarm tea. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from something she couldn't quite name. A mood, maybe, or a memory that hadn't surfaced yet. The house felt too big tonight, the walls too close. It had been 2 weeks since she moved into the old colonial-style home on the edge of town. A good deal, the realtor said, spacious, historic, full of charm, and empty for nearly 4 years. No one talked much about the previous owners, just that they moved out suddenly. That phrase kept echoing in her mind lately. Moved out suddenly, like the way someone might flee a wildfire or a breaking dam. She hadn't slept well since arriving. The nights were loud, settling wood, groaning pipes, distant creaks that might have been nothing, or might have been something. Every noise carved a deeper notch into her nerves. Tonight felt worse. She tried to convince herself it was just the storm, just loneliness, just stress. But by 2:43 a.m., she was wide awake again, lying in bed, sheets pulled tight, staring at the ornate crown molding above. The air in the room pressed down on her, thick and unmoving. Then it happened. A sound so soft, so intimate, it almost didn't register. Meredith. She froze. Not a shout, not a call, a whisper right at the edge of her hearing, like breath against her ear. She bolted upright, heart thudding in her chest, eyes wide. She scanned the room, empty, no wind, no draft. The storm had stopped. Her breath came in quick, shallow bursts. Maybe a dream, a trick of the mind. She'd been under so much stress lately, packing, the move, starting over. But dreams didn't leave you feeling watched. She slid out of bed, the floorboards cool and cruel beneath her soles. She checked the hallway. Nothing. Every shadow looked sharper, like they knew things she didn't. She flipped on the light. Too bright, too sterile. Back in her room, she found herself avoiding the full-length mirror near the closet. She didn't know why, but it made her skin crawl tonight, like the glass might not reflect just her. She went back to bed, forced herself to lie still. By 3:11 a.m., she had almost convinced herself it hadn't happened. until the whisper came again, closer. Meredith, right next to her ear. The tea mug shattered in the kitchen downstairs.
The morning came reluctantly, as if the sun itself didn't want to rise over the house. A pale, colorless light crept in through the bedroom window, casting long fingers of shadow across the warped wooden floor. Meredith sat curled on the edge of the bed, her arms wrapped around her knees. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. The whisper still clung to her, coiled like smoke in her lungs. It hadn't come again after the second time, but that silence felt worse, like something waiting. Downstairs, the broken mug lay in pieces like shattered teeth. She swept it up without thinking, her hands moving mechanically. There were no signs of how it had fallen, no animals in the house, no windows open, just broken. The feeling of being watched hadn't faded with daylight. It just changed temperature, no longer icy and sharp, but lukewarm and crawling, like breath on the back of her neck. She needed air. The backyard was overgrown, choked with ivy and tangled weeds. The swing set left behind by the last family stood crooked, one chain dangling uselessly. Meredith found herself staring at it for a long time, a dull ache blooming in her chest. She didn't remember walking into the house. She only realized she was back inside when she found herself in the upstairs hallway, hand resting on the door to the attic. It had been locked since she moved in. Now it was ajar. Her throat tightened. She should have left it, should have called someone, anyone. But her fingers moved before her mind could catch up, pushing the door open with a quiet creak. Dust spiraled in the shaft of light from the small window at the far end. Old furniture, covered in yellowed sheets, stood like slumped ghosts. Cobwebs clung to the beams. Then, under her bare foot, something shifted. The floorboard gave a soft groan. Curious now, Meredith knelt and ran her fingers along the edge of the plank. It lifted easily, too easily. Beneath it, instead of insulation or wiring, was a cavity about the size of a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in a dry, brittle towel, was a child's drawing. A crayon rendering, a house, scrawled stick figures, red lines slashed across the sky. The title, written in shaky handwriting, said, "The Girl Who Lives in the Walls." Meredith stared at it for a long time, her fingers going numb. Then she heard it again. Closer now. Not just whispered this time. Not just a name. A giggle. Coming from inside the walls.
No one screamed. The absence of Vic was too sudden, too sharp. One moment he was shifting in his seat, brushing popcorn dust from his hoodie. The next, His seat was empty, gently rocking, as if he had only stood to stretch his legs. "Vic?" Jules called into the space between rows. Silence. Not just absence of reply, but dead silence, the kind that feels thick in the throat. The air no longer hummed with the generator. Even the projector had stilled, the reel flapping weakly like a tattered wing. Mara stood up too fast and stumbled. "This isn't a prank, right?" Her voice trembled, unguarded now. "Tell me this isn't one of your immersive experiences, Cam." Cameron stared at Vic's empty seat. He cleared his throat, trying to lock the cracks in his voice behind confidence. "He probably went backstage. You know him, always trying to scare someone. Probably thinks it's hilarious." But Lennox was already moving, flashlight swinging across the aisle. "We would have heard him. He was right next to me. Nobody got up." "No one gets up like that," Jules whispered. It was like he was erased. The four of them split up, calling for Vic. They searched the dressing rooms, where mold bloomed on shattered vanities, the stage rigging, where ropes still dangled like nooses, the orchestra pit, where burnt instruments lay melted into each other like bones in a pit. Nothing. No footsteps, no dust disturbed, not even the echo of movement. Just a hollow quiet of a place that had forgotten sound. Mara found herself back at the projection booth. The reel still hung loose, but behind it, almost hidden beneath coiled wires and old film cases, was another tin, smaller, unlabeled. She hesitated. Everything inside her screamed not to touch it, but her hand moved anyway, fingers trembling. It was warm. Not just room temperature, warm, like it had just been held. She brought it down to Cameron. He looked pale but intrigued, as if fear and obsession were waging war inside him. "We don't play it," Jules said immediately, stepping between him and the projector. "We don't know what it is. Vic disappeared while we were watching the first one." "That could have been a coincidence," he said, tone flat, mechanical. "He might have gone to get help. Signal's dead. He's probably outside calling someone." "Then go outside," Lennox snapped. "Walk out right now. Tell me if the door still opens." It didn't. The main exit was sealed, not locked, but completely sealed over, like it had never been a door at all, just scorched wall. Where they had entered, there was now blackened brick, seamless, solid. Jules pressed her palms flat against it. No, this isn't possible." "It's the real," Mara whispered. "It started when we played it." Cameron finally looked afraid, not annoyed or skeptical. Afraid. "Then we finish it." They all turned to him. "What?" "We played it halfway, right? Maybe it's a loop, a trap. It needs to finish." "That's how you think you fix it? Finish the cursed tape? What the hell is wrong with you?" Cameron didn't flinch. "Everything has a narrative and rules. We're inside something now. If we stop in the middle, maybe it keeps us suspended. But if we finish it, maybe it lets us go." Mara met his eyes. There was no madness in them yet, just cold logic pressed against the edge of panic. "Or maybe it finishes us," Lennox muttered, but no one answered him. The second reel clicked into place. This time, the screen showed only the stage. The curtains, blackened and moth-eaten, pulled open with impossible smoothness. On the stage stood a man, dressed in a tattered tuxedo, back to the camera, and arms raised. In the front row, Jules whimpered. The man on the screen raised a hand and pointed directly at her. And then she, too, was gone.
The knock echoed in her bones long after it stopped. Meredith stumbled back from the closet, her breath ragged, heart screaming for her to run, but her legs refused to move. She stared at the thin motel door, paint flaking at the corners, cheap brass handle glinting faintly in the flickering TV light. Nothing moved, no sound, just that lingering sense of presence, like the air itself had become an eye. Then came a new sound, not a voice, not scratching, breathing, slow, damp, just behind the door. She left the room without packing a thing. She didn't remember driving home, not consciously, only remembered the way her hands trembled on the wheel, the speedometer rising beyond what was safe, the highway melting into rain-slicked roads and empty turns. But somehow dawn found her back at the house, her house, its gray siding streaked from last night's storm. Why had she come back? It felt less like choice, more like gravity. The door was ajar. She never left it that way. Inside, the air was still, too still. The house smelt wrong now. Wet plaster, burnt metal, old dust disturbed. Meredith stepped over the threshold like crossing into another world. The living room light buzzed faintly. Power was back somehow. But the walls, they hummed. Not a sound, a feeling, a pulse. The hallway was darker than it should have been. She passed the mirror, still avoided looking. Something told her that if she looked into it now, she might see too much or not see herself at all. The floor creaked beneath her. She made it to the attic door, closed again, except this time there was something scratched into the wood, tiny letters done by something small and impatient. She's inside now. Meredith's breath caught. She turned, about to run, when the hallway light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. From behind the walls, dozens of tiny fingers began to scratch, first faint, then louder, urgent, crawling, racing toward her from all directions. She stumbled back, her body pinned by terror. "Don't leave me again," the voice whispered from the vents. Then a face. Inside the wall, pressed against the thin plaster, the faint outline of hollow eyes, an open mouth moving silently. A child's face, but not a child. The drywall bulged, cracked. Meredith screamed as fingers pushed through. Bone thin and writhing, she ran, crashing into the stairs, down to the front door. But it wouldn't open. It wouldn't open. Behind her, the wall groaned, tearing apart from the inside. "You let me in," it whispered from all around her now. "So now I'm you." The mirror in the hall cracked. Meredith turned and saw her reflection smile, but she wasn't smiling. The walls fell silent again. When the neighbors called the police a few days later, no one answered the door. The house was still, dusty, nothing broken except the mirror in the hallway, and behind it, inside the wall cavity, they found a child's drawing.
a woman with Meredith's face, but her eyes were gone, and beneath it, in small, shaky handwriting, "The house lives in her now."